the candidates tonight. I'm going to be your MC tonight. My name is Dr. Lance Pearson. I've been closely involved in organizing several grassroots conservative activist groups in the Louisville area, kind of trying to boost efficiency, communication, and cooperation. So I'm going to try to keep our talking to a minimum so the candidates can be the feature tonight. I do want to open up with a brief introduction of who are the Southern Indiana Patriots. So I'm sure some of you have never been to one of our meetings before. The Southern Indiana Patriots are a sizable grassroots organization of concerned constitutional conservatives, most, though not all, with deeply held religious values who are focused on preserving our essential liberties. SIP works to advance our worldview through various initiatives and committees promoting, among other things, school choice and alternative education, educating citizens about the Constitution and their rights, and networking our members with other resources, speakers, and like-minded organizations in the region. It is and this sort of gets into what tonight's about, it is the Leadership Committee's intention to transform SIP into a highly impactful political organization throughout Indiana over several electoral cycles, pushing for a more principled class of political leadership and giving citizens back their sense of true self-government. That is, government of the people, by the people, and for the people. Increased involvement in the electoral process is part of that. And then starting next fall, a legislative committee that really seeks to evaluate, educate, and work with the Indiana General Assembly and our local county and city councils to push legislation that promotes our values. So, how do you find out more about SIP? First, we have a website, sip.red. Very simple, sip.red. We have meetings here, graciously hosted by the Return Church, the second Thursday of every month at 6:30. It's open to the public. You are invited to come in and hear some of our speakers. Next month's featured speaker will be John Schrock of the John Birch Society. He will be explaining the purpose and efforts of his organization, especially addressing the topic of ensuring election integrity. And then here's our legal disclaimers. Return Church does not make any political endorsements, nor are they responsible for anything said or done in any of these meetings. They are our gracious hosts, but they are not responsible for what we say or do. SIP also does not make official political endorsements. In general, however, we regard any candidate listed on the Indiana Liberty Caucus, you can find that at inlibertycaucus.com, to be a candidate who closely aligns with our values on most issues. So if you want to find out more about any of these candidates, you can go to that website, inlibertycaucus.com. There's also handouts, I think, floating around. Someone printed those out. Okay, I'll leave it at that. We do want to open in prayer. Our first candidate that will speak, he's first going to do our opening prayer, is Minister Chartrell Hall. He's a good friend of mine. I'll talk about that briefly. But Minister Chartrell Hall, could you open us in prayer?
You want to do it from there, right?
Right here.
Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come to you saying thank you for the beautiful and glorious day. We thank you for another opportunity to come together to worship you, to praise you. For we thank you for everything that we have, for it comes from you through the Son. Heavenly Father, we come in this meeting tonight understanding what we're fighting for, that the evil one has had his way long enough, and now it's time for those to rise up as you sent the Davids, as you sent the Joshuas, as you sent the Ruths, as you called the Naomis. It is time for us to rise up and to collectively fight the good fight against those that oppose what you have set in place as it is written. For we know that Resurrection Sunday is coming up. We know that Good Friday is here. We know that the Passover, Heavenly Father, and that the Spirit will pass over those who are righteous that you have called, that you have selected. So as your children here today, as that you guide the minds, guide the hearts, and the tongues, that it may speak what needs to be spoken in truth and in love. We ask these things in your Son's name. Amen. Amen.
All right, next I'm going to ask for Angie Reeves to come up. She's going to talk about some various organizational things before we get into the candidates.
Okay, Election Day is May the 3rd. That's on Tuesday, first Tuesday in May. Indiana is already open for early voting. In Clark County, you can vote at the Clark County Courthouse, and also in Floyd County on Green Valley Road. If you want to know the exact locations, times, and dates, you can get with me afterward. It opened on April the 5th. We don't want to discourage you from voting early, but we would encourage you to vote in person on Election Day. That is the best determinant of how many votes are actually cast legally, and we just encourage you to do that. A couple of other little housekeeping things. We just want to thank Return Church for hosting us yet again for our meeting for these important topics that we've been so graciously allowed to do here in our community, to bring people together every month on important topics. This is another really important thing. We would ask for people to consider volunteering for the general election campaigns of your candidate of choice. Those are coming up. We're going to need more boots on the ground for door knocking and sort of things. Also, donations for SIPs. We take cash only donations for our organization, just for administrative things. Feel free to visit the candidates' websites for donations to the candidates that are so graciously here tonight, that agreed to come and speak to us. I'm sure they're, the resources are scarce for our cause, and we need to really reach in deep into our pockets and donate in those ways, as well as spiritually and in prayer. A couple of rules for the church: there's no food in the church, just drinks down here only. And the bathrooms are right outside the hallway, and there's no one allowed to go upstairs. We are strictly confined to this space. No one's allowed to roam the halls of the church. We just want to respect their boundaries. And that's about it. Thanks.
And I neglected this. We always also open up with a Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd please stand.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Born and preborn.
Okay, just a little bit of introduction to who's going to be speaking tonight. The leadership committee of SIP met for around 4 hours comparing candidates on their legislative records prior. The legislative records of prior office holders, and we also sent a survey that was 28 multiple choice questions plus 7 essays on which we asked people about their positions on various liberty topics. So all the candidates that made the cut are highly vetted. They're constitutional conservatives. The topics of those surveys were respect for life, educational policy and family, rights and religion in public life, policing and firearms, and taxes and budgeting. Prior to making any invitations, we basically determined that these are people that are closely aligned with our values. I like to describe it as these are people that are part of the family. There are also some other candidates who didn't quite meet it, but we thought that generally they were allies, so we had that. We're friendly to these people. Some of those people will be allowed to speak at the end. And in several of those races, they're the only Republican candidate in the race. And then we also had a category of unaffiliated. These people we didn't have enough information on, or we thought they were just blatantly opposed to what we stand for. So obviously those people weren't invited. Okay. Okay, let me start first with our first speaker. His name is Minister Chartrell Hall. He will be running for Louisville mayor. He is the only Kentucky candidate invited, but I thought it very logical. If Louisville is not flourishing, then Southern Indiana is not flourishing. And Oldham County is not flourishing, which is, I live about 2 miles over the border, over the river in Oldham County. Chartrell Hall, I know very closely. I won't do introductions like this for everyone, but I know him very closely. I actually helped him put together his website at one point. So he's a good friend. He's a constitutional conservative, and in particular, I'm sure he will talk about bridging the gap, which means bringing in people of all races into the conservative movement. Many people of all races are conservative, even if they don't currently vote that way. Young, old, we don't worry about demographics. What we are interested in is ideology. So, Minister Chartrell Hall.
Thank you, Lance. How's everybody doing? Good. How's everybody doing? Good. I bring energy, life. It's time to fight, right? Okay, so understand, we have to be excited. We have to bring energy. Everything that we have, the time is now. As he said, I'm Minister Chartrell Hall. Lance, thank you so much. Great friend. He's believed in me since the beginning that I told him I had to answer this calling. So before I start, if you served as a vet, if you're a veteran, please raise your hand. Can we clap it up for the veterans, please? Thank you, thank you. Secondly, if you hold an office or you ran for or currently are running for, please raise your hand. Let's give it up for them, please. And I want you to understand why I'm thankful and apologetic to the veterans. My father fought in Saudi Arabia. I did not understand why. I never looked into, I played basketball, wanted to go to NBA. I didn't understand why I had the privilege and freedom to do as I so chose. I'm from Louisville, I'm from the West End. So I inherited the Democratic Party simply because that's all you know. You do what your great-grandparents, grandparents, parents, pass it on down. That's all you know. So I just inherited that, not knowing why, wasn't looking into it. Went to Manual High School, Spalding University, Bellarmine University, thank you so much. Go Knights, played for Kevin Gray and Scott Davenport, then played professionally 7 years around the world. I did not care about anything but the NBA and trying to make millions of dollars to not go back to poverty where I came from. This is all I knew. I was not going to be a gangbanger because they told me not to be a gangbanger. They wouldn't let me. I wasn't a rapper. I'm not a rapper or a singer. I'm not a singer, Angie. Thought I was a singer. I met her at Claudia Sanders. She thought I was singing. I said, nah, that's not me. But I think, I'm a speaker. So I went down this road and down this path, and I got to a point where I'm overseas, running from my city. I was running from Louisville. We see the condition Louisville's in, right? It's a bad condition, right? I know, we can talk about it in here. It's in a very bad place. And has been, it's awful. She said it's awful. It has been on this trajectory for a long time. And I went back and I said, when was the last time we actually had a conservative, somebody who truly stand on values? 1965. Wow. What? That was the last time since 69. It's been the same way in Louisville. So it's not by coincidence, happenings. No, it's by planning. It was designed. It's a system to be exactly where it is now, where you can keep letting out those committing crimes, those committing murders. You keep letting them out to commit more and do more to keep the city under your control, this small group. So I'm here like the Joshuas, the Davids. I'm thankful to those who ran or who is running, because when you're called, you must go. Who can attest to that? When you're called, you must go. Order and belief. But the trust and everything has to start at the top, the leadership. And for 12 years, the current mayor for 12 years has been in that position. I know Greg Fisher, him as a person, nothing against him. But you as a businessman, as a politician, we need statesmen. We need people for the people, that's of the people. And so bridging this gap to create order, law and order. You will abide by the law. We are down 300 officers, if you did not know. 300 walked away. So it's a free-for-all in Louisville. Do whatever you want. The belief that it requires every single person, everyone matters. But what is your part? How do you play your part? Who's bridging the gap? So like I said, I come from the West End. I'm from the South End. Manual, Spalding, and Bellarmine awarded me the East End. I even come across here, like Braden Hobbs is a good friend. He comes out of, Hobby. Look, Danny's up here like, Hobby came up under me in Bellarmine. That's one of my youngest. Love Hobby. Justin Benedetti. and the Benedetti family. So I come over here, I'm looking to bridge and create this proper partnership and sisterhood because it affects everyone, even Oldham County, what goes on in Louisville. So as James 2:17 says, faith must be accompanied by action or it is dead. You cannot just believe and not do, and you cannot do and not believe. It has to go together. And I believe everybody in this room is ready to fight for your city here, but you also know relatives across the river, employees across the river, co-workers. You're tired of it. I'm tired of it. It's going to take something new. So you can look me up at www.hall4mayor502.com. But Lance has all my information. I made a promise to my daughter I would be at her soccer game. She's 4 years old. I have 4 children. I made a promise. I'm a man of my word. My values are family, accountability, integrity, trust, and honor. So I have to keep that word. So I cannot stay. But Lance, thank you, my friend, dearly. Thank you for allowing me to be here. Truly, Southern Indiana Patriots, returning church. I'm deeply honored. I'm here to fight. Please fight with me. Thank you all so much, and God bless.
All right, that's a tough intro. Tough intro to follow.
Real quick, before it's over, can I give you this information, because I'm on the Kentucky Patriots group, because I work on that side group.
Yeah.
And have tons of families, so I wanna put this stuff out there.
You can, and then also if you want to find his info, for example, his website, go to inlibertycaucus.com. All of these candidates have a picture on there. Mouse over it, click on the ball sign, it will take you direct to their website. There's even their email address if you want to email them. So that's a way to keep everybody connected. You can get in touch with all these candidates and network with them. Starting off with a Kentucky candidate, it helps me transition into this initiative. Kentucky's primary is not until May 17th. The Indiana primary is May 3rd. So I am working on the Kentucky side of the river with the conservative activists to get together and for the last 2 weeks of the primary, come over and do door knocking, do canvassing, pass out lists of candidates that are approved for all of these candidates for the 2 weeks before their primary, and have Southern Indiana Patriots and other like-minded groups come over to Kentucky for the 2 weeks before their primary. People don't really start paying attention to the election until 2 weeks out. So I'm calling that the Paint Southern Indiana Red initiative. So we'll talk about that at the very end. Okay, next we're going to transition into Indiana. If you have the order, there has been a slight change in the order. We are going to start with the U.S. Indiana 9 House race. This was previously held by Trey Hollingsworth, who is retiring. There are 9 Republican candidates in that. We have vetted those candidates and invited 2, and you will hear from both of those in just a moment. The first of those candidates is D. Eric Schonsberg. I'll have him come up, and then we will have Mike Sago speak right after that.
All right, thanks for coming out. I'm Eric Schonsberg, running for Congress, 9th District, Indiana. A little biographical information. Been married to my wife, Tanya, for 26 years. She's pretty quiet. She doesn't like stuff like this, but I'm gonna get her to one of the Lincoln Day dinners. We'll get her out at one point. I have 4 sons, ages 17 to 23, 2 by adoption, 2 the more conventional way. Not really raising them anymore. We used to say we're trying to raise a few good men. More like coaching at this point, but doing the best we can there. It's gone pretty well. In terms of nonprofit activity, something that might be of interest to you all, I've been on the board of Brandon's House for 25 years. Currently the president of the board, and they do nonprofit. It's a nonprofit that does master's level counseling for teens and their families. 40% of the clientele is at Floyd County. It's located across from New Albany High School. 40% Clark, and 20% around the region. So if you know people that are needing those kind of services, high level counseling services for teens and families, it's free. That's the work we do. We're always scrambling for revenues. We're always trying to keep our costs in line. So obviously revenues are appreciated from those that have it to support that good work. That's been going on for almost 30 years now. And then in terms of ministry, very active. I love being in Return Church. One of the things I do at a website called thoroughly-equipped.org, for 20 years we've been helping churches get lay leaders and disciple makers equipped in the local church. And we've got a 21-month curriculum where you study about 5 hours a week, meet weekly. And Return Church was one of the 50-plus churches in the country that have done that. So very excited to partner with Return. We've had about 2,500 people do that over the years. We have some lighter curriculum. I do a Bible literacy project called The Word Diet. I also have a radio show called The Word Diet. It's on pause during the campaign. And a podcast called The Word Diet. So very active in terms of ministry. My wife and I lead a college-age Bible study, and that's how I broke my leg, not in the Bible study, but after the Bible study, playing basketball with the young men. If you know people that are looking for a college-age community, we have about 30 people that meet on Sunday evenings up here at Southeast Christian, the Southern Indiana campus. So if you know people, we're always looking to add, especially in this time with COVID, and millennials struggle with community. They're so nervous coming to our group. It's so sad many times, and they're just anxious, socially anxious. And so if you know people like that, please send them our way on Sunday evenings. So all those are part of who I am, big parts of who I am, but really they're not the reason I'm running. I'm running because I'm an economics professor, okay? And there's a lot of stuff that's troubling in the economy. Show of hands, everybody happy with the economy these days? So, okay. And then I'm supposed to say, it's really not that funny. Because what they're doing to the economy is somewhere between tragic, devastating, ridiculous, immoral, etc. We've got to do something about that. If I were a biology professor, about the best I could offer you is maybe to go talk to the new Supreme Court Justice and help her figure out what a woman is. But aside from that, I can't really do very much. But I'm an economics professor, and I've lived, breathed, written, taught about federal public policy for 30 years. I've got 2 books on public policy, hundreds of articles, etc. And so there's lots of issues in economics that really worry me, right? You've got, inflation, gas prices, Social Security, Veterans Affairs, minimum wage, regulation, taxes, little things like that. And those are things that I've studied at great length and can bring a lot of expertise to DC. And maybe it'd be helpful to have an econ professor in DC. And we send a lot of lawyers. How about we send an econ prof? But I'll tell you, the top issue that worries me is the national debt. And that's because the debt could sack our economy any day, frankly. We don't know, right? It'll sneak up on us, right? Here's what we know. We're in a car. It's foggy out. We're not really in the car. We're in the kind of the trunk. Actually, they've got us bound in the trunk. And the Congress and the presidents, for the last 20 years, have been driving that vehicle quickly towards a cliff. It's foggy out, and they've got their foot on the accelerator, and they just keep pressing. And you can't keep doing that. I mean, you don't need a PhD in econ for this one. You can't keep doing this. But we do. And so there's a limit to this. We don't know where it is. We don't know if it's 3 weeks out or 5 months out or 7 years. We don't know where the limit is, but we know we're driving that direction. Here's the thing. It's really easy to blame Democrats for this. I'll give you a little secret. Democrats like to spend a lot of money, and they like big government. That's not a secret. I don't really expect much from Democrats. I have a very low view of what they're going to accomplish, but I do expect a lot of Republicans. And Republicans have been a gross disappointment for 20 years. Right? The last time we had a reasonably conservative Congress was in the late 90s for a short period of time under Gingrich, and then that's it. You go to George Bush and the Congresses for the last 20 years, they have spent money in a way that makes drunken sailors blush. And we just can't have that anymore. It's no longer enough for us to send Republicans to Congress. We have to send conservatives to Congress.
Yes.
It's no longer enough to send reliable Republican votes to Congress. That is not the deal. We have to send compelling voices to Congress who can make the case to the American people, to the media, to the Republican conference to move things. If things can be fixed, that's the only way it's going to happen. And so I think being an economics professor, someone who's thought, taught, and written about this stuff for a long time, gotten good at explaining it to students, I feel like I could do that. So that's really important to me. Second issue that's really important to me is the Constitution, right? And so, the whole Constitution is important, right? I mean, that's a big deal. But some parts are under attack more than others these days, right? Second Amendment, of course. All the candidates in this race, thankfully, are strong on the Second Amendment. But the First Amendment's taken a beating here the last 15 years. Freedom of speech. The last couple of years, freedom of religion with COVID. We can't have that. We have to defend the First Amendment. And the 10th Amendment is a really big deal, right? The federal government is just way too big. It's overtaking things that should be done at the state and local level. We have candidates in this race who don't even seem to understand that. They get up and talk and give speeches like this and talk about state and local issues. You're not running for state and local office, you're running for Congress. We have to talk about what can Congress do, right? And so it may be a lovely idea the government would do such and such, maybe, I don't know, probably not. But it's not the role of the federal government. Two issues I talk about all the time here. You know who made the decision to put masks on our kids, right, throughout COVID? The federal government. Now, whatever you think of masks, that is not the realm of the federal government to make that decision. That is asinine, right? Hoosiers have to defend their elections. We need election integrity. We don't want DC telling us about how to run our elections. This is the 10th Amendment, and it gets abused all the time. We've got to get back to the 10th Amendment. The third thing I emphasize is being a compelling voice. There's lots of garbage in DC, right? Grasping for power. Everything's just an excuse to bang on the other party. We've got to do better than that. I got to meet with a climate change lobby group out of Bloomington, and they offered to meet with all the candidates. Turns out I was the only Republican, or they told me I was the only Republican to meet with them. Well, it turns out they were free market environmentalists, so I got along very well with them. But I think what happened was my other 8 friends who were running for office heard climate change and thought, nah, I don't think so. I'm not going to talk to them. We have to talk to people. We have to find the common ground with the 40% or the 80% that exists. We can't just keep banging on people and assuming labels. We've got to do better than that. I think the race is actually, I mean, there's lots of us. There's lots of ways in which we're the same. We're all strong on pro-life. We're strong on the Second Amendment. We're strong on the border. You've got people with different levels of experience. You've got a candidate who's got, I think 5 or 6 terms in the state legislature. I think has a reasonably conservative record, but she's also the establishment candidate. And there was an article in the Indy Star saying it's her turn to win the race. I don't think that's how it works. I don't think we have the Indy Star telling us it's her turn to win the race. We have a representative who served in Congress 15, 20 years ago, has 1 term there and served there for a term within those Republican Congresses I talked about earlier. We've got another state legislator that served about a half of a term. Then you've got 4 guys that are running, wonderful men, nice guys, but they don't have any experience. You're taking on faith that they're going to do what they say they're going to do. And then you got me, you got an economics professor, someone with a proven record, 30 years of free market, limited government. It's in the writing, books, articles. I've taught this stuff, and it's just at my core that I believe that government is typically unconstitutional, unethical, and impractical. Other than that, they do a pretty good job. All right? And we've got to do a much better job, right? Again, sending conservative voices to DC, not just Republican votes. I'm Eric Schonsberg, running for Congress, and I appreciate your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Eric. The next candidate that's up is a businessman, former congressman, Mike Sodrell for the same race. And I neglected to mention, generally keep applause down until the end. I mean, at the end of the candidate speaking. All right, thank you.
What he said. You won't find a lot of daylight between the candidates, the 9 candidates that are running for office here. I was endorsed by Indiana Right to Life. In fact, I sat on their board of directors several years back. I have an A rating with the NRA. In fact, I'm a endowment life member of the NRA and I'm the sponsor of one of the most successful Friends of the NRA banquets, fundraisers in the United States out of Starlight, Indiana. Served in the National Guard. They screwed my paperwork up. They always told me if you were a truck driver in real life, when you went in the Army, they'd make you a cook. And if you were a cook, they made you a truck driver. Well, they made me a truck driver. And then I came back and they put me in an armored personnel carrier, close to a truck, right? I was discharged as an E6, a staff sergeant, a platoon sergeant, and track commander. Graduated from New Albany High School, married a young lady from Jeffersonville High School. Those of you that are local know that back then you weren't even supposed to date anybody from Jeffersonville, leaving out marrying. We actually married 19 days after we met, and she said, told people that I asked her to marry her on the first date, and I said, don't tell them that, they'll think I'm impetuous. It was the third date. We were married 47 years before she passed on of breast cancer. Our business is just right across the interstate, on the other side of the interstate. My experience with economics is we provided employment for hundreds of Hoosiers for decades, and I had to balance the budget, and I didn't have a printing machine, a printing press where I could just print more money when I ran out. Eric is exactly right on balancing the budget. I don't think we can do it all at one fell swoop. The damage to the economy would be a real shock. But if you've had a hiring freeze, for example, the attrition rate of federal employees is about 6% a year. So if you didn't hire anybody, you can shrink the federal government by 24% in 4 years' time. That's non-military. Because if you read this book, and I've given out somewhere between 20 and 30,000 of these, I kind of lost count, you find that one of the primary functions of the federal government is to provide for the common defense. You know, I was really amazed to find when I served, they considered the defense budget to be discretionary and social spending to be mandatory. And I said, really? How does that work? You know, when your primary responsibility is to provide for the common defense, you would think it would be mandatory, and the other stuff would be discretionary. So the reason I'm running is that the country, I mean, this administration, I can't think of one thing that they've done correctly. They opened the border, they closed the pipe, they've driven the energy industry. You know, they keep talking about all these permits out here, and why aren't they out here drilling? Well, because they took all the drilling permits back to DC where they could slow walk them, and they're sure they've got leases, but they don't have any permit to drill there. I got tired of hearing about ANWR in Alaska. You've heard of the Arctic National Wildlife Refuge, where they wanted to drill. So I went to ANWR. It's 200 miles inside the Arctic Circle. I went to a little village called Kaktovik on Barter Island. I talked to the Inuits, Eskimos, if you want to call them that, the local folks. They want to drill. You know, I went all down the North Slope, Prudhoe Bay and Dead Horse, and I can't pronounce Point Barrow. They changed it to an Inuit name that I can't pronounce now. I'll learn how to do that. But they all want to drill. As Sarah Palin said, Alaska is our Fort Knox of energy. You know, we were energy independent under President Trump, and boy, it didn't take long. How does it make sense that you strangle the American energy industry, and you buy oil from Russia, and then you call Venezuela and see if they're going to give us some oil? And so I thank you for the opportunity to be here. I think it's appropriate you're meeting in a church. John Adams, as most of you know, is our first vice president, our second president. He signed the Declaration of Independence. He wrote the Massachusetts Constitution. And he said, our Constitution was designed for a moral and religious people. It is wholly inadequate to govern any other. And the problem is, as we become less and less moral, they keep trying to pass more and more laws to fix it. You can't fix it, except with morality. So thank you all for the opportunity to be here tonight. And if you choose to send me back to Congress, I'll do the best I can to make you proud. Thank you. I might say, I'm sorry I have to go, but I'll be back.
All right, thank you, Mike. We're going to switch from the federal election, which is what we just addressed, and then we'll go from local all the way up to state senate. So our next two candidates are going to be Floyd County Council. They are not running against each other. There are, I think, 4 positions, and so each is running for their own seat. So first, let me start with Floyd County Council, Division 1, Charlie Moon.
thank Sip and Lance for hosting this, the church also for hosting that. Get that out of the way. There you go. Is that better?
You want to
No,
know?
you're good. You're good. For the opportunity to come and speak. We do have another council member here that we are not running against each other, and we're kind of paired up on the same wavelengths. But my name's Charlie Moon. I'm 47 years old. I'm married to my wonderful wife for about 9-ish years. I've lived in Floyd County for about 10 years. We have 4 kids. I have 3 grandkids. We are actually business owners. We are a small business owners here, there in Floyd County. We employ Hoosiers. Our workforce is Indiana people. And I don't know with this economy, with this new administration, but as a business owner, I'm here to tell you right now, it's a struggle. And it has been a struggle. And you sit there and you look at Floyd County, you have businesses leaving Floyd County, you have small businesses shutting their doors. What is our county government doing to help that situation? I haven't seen anything. But if you sit back, you hear about Nova Park. You hear about the county building that's getting ready to be built. You sit back, we need infrastructure, no doubt. But you're not even hearing really anything about that. Our politicians sitting in Floyd County is not giving us taxpayers the answers that we need and the help that we need right now. And that's what I stand for, is the small business owner and the taxpayer. This county building needs to be built or redone. I understand that. It is outdated. But it should not come to a high price of a taxpayer to make this building astronomical. The prices need to be kept lower. And I will fight on that council to make sure that that is done. Sorry, this is actually my second event talking, so as I said, I'm kind of still getting used to this, and I'm unopposed in this race, so, but back, one of the biggest things that you see in the county government is transparency. Not just transparency from the taxpayers, transparency within the own elected officials. They don't talk. They don't know what each other's doing. And they want to throw it out on the table at the last second and say, here you go. They sit back and they tell lies on each other. For what reason? I don't know. It's supposed to be an effort. And the council is a Republican council. And I'll be the first one to say it right now, 2 years in a row has been given by the Democrats on who's going to be president and vice president. 2 years in a row. That's not right. That's not conservative. People can stand around and say, I'm pro-life, I'm pro-Second Amendment. I care about the taxpayers. When we're sending these politicians up here to do their jobs that we elect them to do, they forget about the taxpayers. And enough is enough, and that's why I'm standing out. I looked at 2 other races to run, but I decided at this point in time, I can do better at the Floyd County Council and help to push things through and start getting transparency out there. And that is my promise. I want to keep taxes low, I want to make transparency, and I want to make the best decisions for the people that live, work, and play in Floyd County. They're telling me my time's up, so I'm going to zip it up. Just real quick on the Second Amendment right, I am a hunter, and matter of fact, and I can say this because my wife won't shoot me in here right now, but I had the opportunity, I stopped in and I bought me a new turkey gun this morning.
Really?
Right there in Floyd County, not over here at Bass Pro Shop. Right there at a gun store in Floyd County. I love you. Thank you.
Thank you, Charlie. So Charlie's running for Floyd County Council Division 1. Is Adam Roberts here?
He's not.
He had a conflict. We knew that he probably wasn't going to be able to make it. He's running for Floyd County Council Division 2, but he was vetted by our leadership committee, so Adam Roberts, I do want to mention him. Next up is Floyd County Council Division 3. Danny Short or Daniel Short? I'm not sure which he really goes by.
Am I in trouble or not?
Not
I haven't, yeah, I go by Danny, I try to keep it informal. Danny Short, running for re-election to County Council Division 3. If you see me blinking up here, I just got some new contacts. I'm not trying to like hit on anybody. My left eye is a little weird right now. I got monovision contacts. I'm trying to get used to them. So forgive me if I wink at you. Let me say something about Adam Roberts real quick. He did have a conflict. Adam is really aligned with my beliefs as well. He's just not as good looking as me. But we've been called the Sons of Thunder on the council. I think some of the opposing members might call us other names, but Adam's a true conservative. He's in a tough battle right now with some forces that have aligned with some Democrats to try to oust him because of the noise that we make on the council. So like I said, I'm running for re-election. I actually grew up in Clark County in a big metropolis called Nab. Anybody know where Nab is? All right, I grew up in Nab. Used to be railroad tracks there. I think they've taken those out now. Now you don't even have to slow down through there. So, when I went to college at IUS, and later on I moved to Floyd County. I like to say Floyd County has to recognize who Floyd County is. We're not Clark County. We don't have a river ridge. We don't have thousands of acres for employment. We're never going to have that. We're not Harrison County. We don't have a casino. Our council doesn't have to meet twice a month to figure out how to spend all that casino money. We don't even have really a true riverfront like Jeffersonville does in the city of New Albany. But what Floyd County does have is the 5th lowest, I think we're teetering between 5 and 6 right now, lowest property taxes in the state of Indiana. If I can push it down to 4, we'll just keep pushing it down. I'm a local realtor. I've got my finger on the pulse of what's going on economically in the area and what's going on with real estate prices. And Floyd County is consistently 10 to 15% higher in home values than the surrounding counties. And there's a reason for that. Floyd County recognizes who Floyd County is, okay? Good parks, good schools, low taxes, decent infrastructure. We're working on that as well. We can't be something we're not. Charlie mentioned Nova Park. I won't get into details on that. That is an attempt to become some kind of miniature river ridge facility. It's the cost of it is like the bridge to nowhere. It's crazy. It's Floyd County's only TIF district. It'll never pay for itself in decades, okay? I understand trying to be proactive, but this was the wrong approach. I'm a tax hawk. I scrutinize budgets. If y'all aren't familiar with what county councils do, we're 98% budgets, okay? We spend the money, we allocate it, and that's what we do. It sounds very boring, but I love it. Before I was on the council, I was 8 years president of the Albany Township Board, and I dealt with budgets. All right, in my professional life before real estate, I dealt with budgets. There's a certain way to do things, there's a certain way not to do things. You can do it on a federal level how liberals like to do it and just try to write blank checks and not look to the future, or you can plan, you can set priorities, and you can keep your taxes where they are, and that's what I plan on doing. As far as public safety goes, I was the chief negotiator for the sheriff's department, for corrections, for the road department, and this year we'll be talking to the dispatchers. And we had one of the smoothest negotiations with our sheriff's department that we've ever had. The current sheriff said, unbelievable how smooth that went, okay? Floyd County Sheriff's Department is highly respected in this region. Those jobs are sought after. And one thing I want to make a point of is in Floyd County, there will be no defunding of police. We are going to fund the police. And that's what we did. And, you know, we had an issue with our corrections officers. What a tough job. If y'all haven't ever visited the jail, do it legally. Sheriff Luke will give you a tour. Yeah, go through the good door, and he'll let you back out. Corrections officers have a tough job, and they weren't being paid what they deserve for that position. So we did, to retain people, we did bump those up, and that's the right thing to do. That's our job. You know, crime in Floyd County outside city limits is relatively zero. I mean, property crime is pretty much it. We don't have a whole lot of mischief going on, and that's the way we intend to keep it. I mean, this is where my kids live and grow up, and that's what we want to see. As far as Second Amendment goes, the council took up last year the prospect of making Floyd County, well, how do we say that, Marty? Second Amendment sanctuary county. The commissioners refused to hear it, so the council took it up. Me and Adam Roberts pushed that through, and I don't know if we're fully green, but we're a light shade, I believe. On the council side, we approved that. So on the council, I don't get to talk about right to life or you know, some of these other issues that you know, the people running for Congress get to, but that's what shapes me. That's how I was brought up. I was brought up listening to my dad and my grandpa, you know, talk about life and situations, and that's what shaped me. So anyway, they're telling me to wrap it up. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. Again, Danny Short, County Council, District 3. I would love to appreciate your vote. If anybody wants to talk, I'm going to try to hang around for a little while. Thanks.
All right, thank you, Danny. We've got one more person before we'll let you stretch your legs, so keep your attention. The next person up is the Floyd County Commissioner, I believe in Division 1, is that?
District 1, yeah.
District 1, okay, Dr. Al Knabel.
Thank you. All right, I wasn't sure I was going to be able to get here tonight. I came in from Bloomington right to here, so I appreciate the flexibility on the schedule, and I did make a few notes because of that, because I kind of wrote those in on the way in. First off, Danny and Adam on the council do a great job. Sons of Thunder, I've heard sons of other things, but I see some young people here, so I won't finish that thought. But they do a great job, and Charlie's going to do a great job, and Connie does a great job on there. And I do want to thank the church here tonight and Southern Indiana Patriots for hosting us. And I want to thank you all for being here too. And I really want to give you guys some credit, because I hear the Pledge of Allegiance said a lot, but I don't hear it always said with the enthusiasm and the realism that I heard it tonight. So it was good to be among like-minded people. I'm going to keep it to the basic points that Lance put in there. Who am I, and what do I stand for, and why am I running, and those types of things. So I am Al Knabel. I was born and raised in New Albany on my own after about the age of 17. Went away to school for roughly 20 years between Purdue and IU Medical School and residency, and then had to pay for all that some way, so proud to serve in the United States Air Force. Been married to the same woman, Jessica Knabel, who probably many of you follow on Facebook under Jess Saint. She had to come up with an alias so that when she's in jail under one name, she can post under another name. And we're very hopeful that Elon Musk purchases Twitter and restores that to a voice for the people. So married her for 25 years, 4 children. One Purdue grad out of that, 2 at Purdue after one finishes New Albany here, and one getting ready to graduate from IU, which is one of the reasons I was up there. Why I'm running really comes down to a couple of things. Number one, after seeing a lot of the world between school and the Air Force, my wife and I had choices to where we wanted to live, but we really wanted to come back here. We love New Albany, Floyd County, Southern Indiana, and we really struggle with that. There's kind of, it's not keeping up with other communities. There are people who are leaving, and we really thought that we could work to make it a better place to be, the best that it could be. Another thing with government that I've noticed over the years, and Charlie, you alluded to this, but I really got frustrated with the fact that once people get elected to office, all too quickly they seem to represent the government body that they were elected to, and they forget about the taxpayer, and that's always frustrated me. I've been on the New Albany City Council 6 years, and I think I've developed a record of dependability, accessibility, and transparency. I mean, simply put, I have remained accountable to the people who voted for me rather than the government. And I'm going to continue to do that as Floyd County Commissioner. You know, again, it's sometimes difficult to follow other speakers. It's sometimes easier because sometimes you can build off of what they've said. And as Danny said, we don't really get to talk about these big league issues sometimes that they happen about Congress, but it does, you know, what we believe and what we stand in, that's the prism through how we make our decisions. You know, so what gets down to what I stand for, I am pro-life, I'm pro-Constitution, all of it, although I got a call from my accountant today and the 16th Amendment is not real high on my list today, knowing what I have to pay in income taxes. Thank God we get to go to Monday before we write those checks. But in all seriousness, the entire Constitution, I've taken an oath to support and defend the Constitution 5 times. 3 as an officer in the United States Air Force, twice as an elected official, and I take that very seriously. I'm for low taxes, I'm for low regulation, I'm for equal protection under the law, I'm for equal opportunity under the law, but I am not for equal outcome under the law. You gotta work for what you want in this life, okay? So I don't want equal outcome, you know, meted out by some arbitrary official, whether that be in New Albany or Floyd County or in Indianapolis or in DC. So that's the prism through which I look through and make these decisions. You can sometimes have a bigger impact than the local things, although the local things are awfully darned important when it comes to killing the line on taxes. Back in the summer of 2020, when people were marching in the riots, I had a reporter who called me and said I was the third, fourth person that he had contacted when I want to go on record on defunding the police. I said, well, sure, I will. It's a non-starter for me. It is not going to happen. So I was the only one that he was able to find that would quote on that day. I don't think he called you, Danny. I don't think he called you or any of the folks up at this table, or they would have gotten it. He just got to my number first. I like to be pragmatic with what I do. There was a time when people said we're just going to shut down the Sherman-Minton Bridge for 2 years. That's the way it's going to be. I got a group of federal, state, local officials together with the NDOT chairman. We cornered him in a room for about an hour on a hot July day, and you know, we got minimal total closure time out of that because of that. So you have to really focus locally, but you've also got to be willing to speak with the folks that are in office. And that's why I'm so glad that Dr. Schomburg and Mr. Salger are here tonight. You know, that they will actually pick up the phone, whomever of those two gets there. And God, I pray it's one of these two guys that gets in there. But I'll close by saying that I've been asked, you know, am I too busy to do this job? You know, why do I want this job with my headache? And it's true that I'm very busy. You know, I'm a father, I'm a husband, I'm a small business owner. The last time I counted, I think I've got 3 businesses that I kind of run. I volunteer 5 to 6 charitable organizations at any one time. I'm an author. I host a podcast, as is Eric, and that takes some work to it too. But, you know, a wise man once said, if you want something done, ask a very busy person to do it. And I'll get it done. So put me to work for you, and I'll make Floyd County the best it can be. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you. I promised people the opportunity to stand up, stretch your legs. We'll start back in 5 minutes at the most, so don't go too far. Bathroom break, water break, whatever you got to do.
Oh, okay.
Did we do the pass the basket for the, we have the basket?
I was probably hanging around. I was at like to the meeting. I was reading.
Do it right now. Jackie, Kevin, Gary, it didn't really matter. It's just like, you could have lost Jackie, it's okay. You're probably not that bad. We agree on that. It's like, I told them we're gonna have. I just kept it to that. You could have asked that. Like, what the federal government, something you know, we're asking citizens, what are you gonna do about it?
Okay, if you could start making your way back to your seats. Okay, a little bit of business that I neglected earlier. We do generally take a goodwill offering for the church. All this money goes to the upkeep of the church for letting us use your facility very generously. So we'll be passing around a bucket if you've got a couple dollars to throw in there. Again, all that money goes straight to Return Church, who's been very gracious hosting us. Okay, our next speaker is going to be Indiana House Rep for District 72, Jackie Bright Grubbs. Jackie Bright Grubbs.
Well, I want to thank Southern Indiana Patriots for doing this, and actually, I think it's mutually beneficial. In the last couple of years, I've attended some government meetings, and for the people that represent our local government, they've spoken to basically empty rooms. And so also, I know a lot of you all have asked basic questions about how the local government works and what it does, and so I think this has been mutually beneficial for a lot of people here. It's also provided me with a lot of encouragement and a lot of hope, and for being elected or getting elected, because I think it will be phenomenal, and I think we can make a big difference up at the State House by working together with this awesome team in Floyd County. So many of you know me, but for those of you who do not, I have been political for about 2 years. My father was a World War II veteran, and I come from a very patriotic, Catholic, conservative family, and we were always taught to vote. And even though we did so, I don't know that we were always very informed voters. But 2 years ago, we went from being the land of the free and the home of the brave to being the land of the incitement of fear, the land of being controlled, and the land of having our individual rights stripped from us in order to keep us safe. This is when I started wondering what in the world was going on. The first couple of weeks, I was a sheeple. I don't know how many other people here were sheeple, but I just started trying to find out information on the internet about the virus, and as I did, I ended up finding doctors all over the country and all over the world who were successfully treating patients with tried and true medication, and they were being threatened that they were going to lose their medical license. There is a doctor, and I always refer to Dr. Scott Jensen. He's running for governor in Minnesota. He was one of the first ones that I stumbled across, and he was also a state senator, and I know that they were saying he was going to be stripped of that position, and I believe he might have been. So then that gave me a different thing to wonder about, and that was, why would this happen when these doctors were helping all of these people? From there, I was told about a Back the Blue rally in Jeffersonville while Louisville was being ransacked and filled with violence. And so I attended the Back the Blue rally, and it had 7 outstanding speakers. Some were retired police officers, some were lobbyists for the police, and some were current police officers. And Black Lives Matter, they kept us company and kept us all well entertained, going around the perimeter, going, And so as that happened, there was a retired policeman who was from Cuba. And he kept saying, "You're what the communists call useful idiots. And what you don't understand is today you are free to do that in this country because you live in a free country. But if you are successful, you will no longer be of any use to them." And so after the Back the Blue rally, I went and had conversations with some of these people. And so then I began researching even heavier and looking for different events to find throughout the state. And in Kentucky, there were several different gatherings, whether it be in Lexington, Frankfort, or Louisville. And in Indiana, you could also find other gatherings. There was a Back the Blue rally up in Madison, and there were several other honestly, I probably have been, I'm going to throw out a number, 40 or 50 different events that I have been to, whether it was on election integrity, whether it was on the COVID virus, whether it was on the vaccine. It's just been critical race theory. And so all of a sudden we are caught in this big fire hose of just one crazy train thing coming after us after another. So in the course of my visits to the State House lawn, because from July to November, every month, there was a meeting, Bring Your Lawn Chair to the State House lawn. And by this time, I'd already been enrolled in the Hoosier Leadership Society because I had been approached at another event on the election integrity about that. And so I had completed a 10-month course there. At the State House lawn, they were asking for people who would please consider running for state representative to get a conservative voice and to get as many people as possible in our State House who will represent we the people. So I responded to that text message along with about 40 some odd others. And there's about 35 of us now who are running throughout Indiana for the State House. So if we can do that, hopefully we can make a big difference. Some of these people were blocked because of a change in law where instead of voting in 1 out of the last 4 primaries, the law got switched where you had to vote out of 2 out of the last 4. And so it disqualified some concerned citizens who were also wanting to become engaged. But Benjamin Franklin, there's a quote, and I'm going to paraphrase it the best that I can. He who would give up essential liberty for a little bit of temporary security deserves neither liberty or security. So we must stand up for freedom and liberty. Someone else referred to the Biden nominee who cannot define a woman. And I was listening to a podcast, and if this is correct, which I believe it probably is, this nominee also said that the Founding Fathers were wrong and that there are no unalienable rights that the government cannot take away. If this is the case, we all have a reason to be alarmed. The Constitution, which I have taken a couple of classes on that, and hopefully when I'm elected, I will also take another couple of classes on that and carry one with me, just as Mr. Sonrel did, so that I can make sure that I'm following the Constitution. It was set up, darn it, I have a lot to say, Angie. It was set up for a sovereign state, sovereign counties, and a federal government to do a distinct number of things to protect our individual rights. That is not happening. So if I'm elected, that is my number one goal. I have plenty others, but that is my reason for running for office. The situation of our education system with the critical race theory and the explicit sexual content will be another thing that I am working on. I'm also concerned about ESG scores, because if those get put into place where to get a loan, you have to be environmentally a certain way, socially minded a certain way, that is complete control and a lack of freedom. We need to fight against that. And I have a display in the back that also has literature that will tell you all the other things that I stand for. But number one, I consider myself a citizen. I do not consider myself a person of the government. Even if I'm elected, I'm there to defend you. And we need to avoid electing people that feel they're part of the government, feel they're aligned with big corporations, feel they're in line with bureaucracies, and or in line with non-governmental organizations that cause a lot of influence and control over our lives every day. God bless you all. God bless America.
Thank you, Jackie. Jackie didn't mention it, but she is actually running against an incumbent Republican who is one of only 2 Republicans to vote against the bill in the legislature that would have forced same-sex competition in sport. So it's possible for transgender boys to compete against girls in Indiana legislation if her opponent had his way. So one of only 2 Republicans.
Gotta go.
I do want to mention there is another candidate for a different House race that we do consider closely aligned. His name is Zachary Payne. He had a previous obligation, but we do want to throw his name out there if he happens to be, if you happen to be in his district. Okay, next up, we have 2 candidates for Indiana Senate 47. And ironically, both of these candidates are incumbent senators. This happened in Kentucky as well. They decided to redraw the district maps and put both of these candidates into the same district. But both of these candidates we considered closely aligned with our values. The first that we will bring up, his name is Kevin Bainline.
Thank you very much. I'm the guy who has the weird name. So Boehnlein. If you see those signs or if you've got any of my mailing pieces, that's me. I'm Kevin Bainline. Thank you so much for the opportunity to be here tonight. I want to talk about a couple things that I think might be important to you. I'm going to talk about faith, family, and freedom. So we'll talk a little bit about that, but I want to give you a little background about me. So my adult life, I've lived in Floyd County. I'm married 25 years in June. I have two daughters, one who is a junior at Floyd Central, another one who is a sophomore in college at IU Southeast. My wife's a teacher at Highland Hills, and by day, I'm a financial advisor with Edward Jones just right down the road here. So that's a little bit about me, but I want to share some things with you because I think it might resonate with you. Faith is very much a part of who I am. It's the reason I'm actually running for this seat. Back in May of last year, I was forced to kind of get off the fence and make a decision about what I was going to do. During that time, I took a lot of time to talk to my ministers, talked to my friends, some elders, some people who I thought I could trust to give me the right decision to do this, and prayed a lot. For me, this is about getting off the sidelines. I don't know if you feel that way. Many of you are probably here because you feel like, I talked to a few of you earlier, that, golly, the world has just passed us by. We haven't been involved in a while, and because we haven't been involved in a while, things have gotten wildly out of control. I don't know if that resonates with you, but it did with me. So for me, for about 17 years, I got out of government and politics. I worked for the city of New Albany for 4 years. I was responsible for helping get the YMCA project up and going, helping fix some of the sewer problems in New Albany. I ran Mike Soudrell's campaign when he was elected in 2004. And so I took a sabbatical and got out. But I felt like you, that I was just frustrated about the direction that we're headed. My faith informs me. I don't know about you, but I had a drug problem when I was a kid. I got drugged to church on Sunday morning, Sunday evening, Wednesday nights. So I spent a lot of time in church, and it totally informs me of who I am. So faith is a cornerstone of who I am and why I'm running. Family. I'm pro-life. It's a litmus test for me. I don't know if it is for you, but when I'm voting for someone, I look to see if they're pro-life. And that's an easy thing to say you're pro-life and not vote that way. In this General Assembly, I was a sponsor of a bill that made it illegal to coerce women to get abortions. Seems like that shouldn't be something we'd have to do as a law, but it actually makes it a level 6 felony if someone bullies a female into getting an abortion in the state of Indiana. That's punishable by up to 2.5 years in prison. That's what we should do for people who are bullying people to get into that environment and to have an abortion. I'm pro-family. One of the easiest votes that I made this last legislative session was actually the one that the governor vetoed. I voted in favor of keeping boys from participating in girls' athletics. I have two daughters who participate. We've come too far for us to go in this direction. And it's going to be another easy vote, hopefully this summer, in May when we get back in session, that we'll be able to override that veto of the governor and send a message that Indiana stands up for little girls and little girls in their sports and keeping little boys in their sports. Does everybody agree with me on that? So freedom. Again, this is an easy thing to talk about, but it's maybe not an easy thing to do. I had this conversation many times with folks. I actually knocked on the door in Harrison County, and while I was in Harrison County, ran into a gunsmith who actually helped fix my Glock. I made a mistake. I bought some reloads, and so glad I had a Glock and not another gun because I might not have a couple fingers here tonight. But I had a conversation with him. I thought it was an easy conversation. So where would you be on the constitutional carry bill? He said, well, that's a good question. I really don't know. He says, I said, well, I don't have a maybe button. You know, when we're voting in the General Assembly, there's really about 1/4 inch between the green and red. So there's a difference between having an intellectual conversation and actually doing what we say we're going to do. When I voted for that bill to pass constitutional carry in the state of Indiana, the superintendent of the state police department was standing right behind me. He was against it. But I had many conversations with local folks here who are some of them at the tables that are here with us tonight. Sam's one of them, Steve's another one. I talked to Frank Loop and Jamie Knoll and some of our sheriffs and Nick Smith in Harrison County about where do you stand on this issue? And so got some consensus with that. That's the way that I like to approach this. So for me, faith is a cornerstone of who I am. Family is a big part of who I am and what I'll do. And freedom, the ability to have the freedoms to do the things that we as citizens have the right to do under the Constitution. There's a couple organizations have endorsed me for this race. The Indiana Farm Bureau is one. I'm proud to have their endorsement. I've worked really hard to get their endorsement. We've had some roundtable discussions. And so for me, the way that the work we do as General Assembly members, the vote is just one part of the process. That's just one part of what we do. There's another bigger part about constituent services. So for me, I had a roundtable discussion with a group of farmers in Harrison County not too long ago. In that conversation, we found a couple things that really bubbled up. You know, for me, when I go down the highway and I look and I see on the side of the road that we have weeds in median, that means something to me that's maybe it's not so pretty. But to a farmer, that means there's noxious weeds in the median, and that's getting into their yards, and then it's getting their yards, and the farmers and the cattle get into it. That becomes a really big problem. So we sat down, we had a meeting with NDOT, we had some people there from the Purdue Extension, and we convened a meeting in the last couple of weeks to sit down and say, how can we approach this and how can we fix it? That's what we do as legislators. That's what you should expect of us. The other thing you should expect of us is that if you have an idea, something that is on your mind, something you think that we need to fix as members of the General Assembly, all of you have a skill and ability from your life experiences that you can bring to bear and bring to us so that we can bring that to bear. In this last General Assembly, I had an opportunity to hear from a doctor who had an issue at the local level, just with some things to talk about how doctors get described and other medical professionals get described. It resulted in a piece of legislation that has become a model legislation for the state of Indiana, but also a model piece of legislation for the country. So we've had an opportunity to take something at the very local level, put it into a bill format, and actually get it signed by the governor in my first session in the General Assembly. So it's not about just talking about what we can do, it's about doing the things that we say we do, and it starts with each and every one of you at the local level, giving us that opportunity to share your best ideas at the General Assembly. I'm going to be very plain with you. I want your support, and I want it badly. I've worked really hard for this. I've spent the last 9 months, I've been in 2 different districts, and I've had 4 different opponents. The only common theme in this has been me. And I continue to stand firm because I believe that God has me in this time and place to represent the folks of this district. And I want your support because I think that I can do what it is that you want out of a constitutional conservative, but also a person who lives and works among you who can represent your best values. With that, I'd love to have your support. Thank you and have a great evening.
Thank you, Kevin. Our next speaker is for the same race. That's Indiana Senate 47. Many of you know him. He's spoken to our group before, I think actually last month. Gary Byrne.
Thank you, everybody. Again, my name is Gary Byrne, and I'm a current senator for District 47. I was caucused in February for Aaron Houchin, just like my opponent was caucused in maybe a few months before for District 46. But a little bit about me. I've been married going on 40 years this year to my wife, Angela. We have 3 boys and 7 grandchildren. 2 of them are coming in June. We have twins coming. And so we're very, very, very family oriented. I consider myself a Christian man, believe in God. I believe our document, the Constitution, is the 2nd best document ever created. And it was created because we have the Bible that our founding fathers used to give us that special document. My political past is I've been on the school board for 8 years. 4 years I served, and then had a 2-year vacation because the teachers union, it seemed like they didn't like me. And they campaigned against me and got me off. I had a sign here the last time that had my name on it, Gary Byrne, with a 0 and a thing. They put out about 100 signs and campaigned against me. So I think it's ironic, the first day I'm up in Indianapolis, guess who's up there? The teachers union. And we got an education bill because we got indoctrination going in our schools, and it's called critical race. And it's also called trying to say that we got more than one sex, and there's only boys and there's only girls. We're calling a boy that thinks he's a girl a transgender girl. That's not what we need to do. So I did sponsor the bill that kept the boys from playing in the girls' sports. It was that important. I put my name on it. Not all the senators did, just a few. And I'm not afraid to fight for things that's wrong. And it did pass. Not all the Republicans voted for it. 32 of them did out of 39. Sent it to the governor, he vetoes it. We got to go back and fight against that. So this critical race theory is happening in our schools. Maybe not as bad as it is in the cities, but it is in our schools, because the school board approves the books that's being taught, but they're not approving what's on the internet or what's in the teacher's head that they've been taught at these universities and been indoctrinated. Now they're coming back and indoctrinating our children. We may not know that. We had a bill up there, critical race theory, it defined it, and the ISTA was up there opposing it in a room bigger than this, full of them. And we had a bunch of weak Republicans in the Senate that wouldn't pass it or wouldn't even put it to the floor. I will stand and fight against that. Critical race theory is in our schools, and we got to stop it. I've seen it when I was on the school board before. I've seen indoctrination going on back in 2006, 2012. Not as radical as it is today. But I'm not afraid to fight the ISTA. The ISTA is a part of the Democratic Party. They are endorsing this. The NEA, the National, is endorsing that. I've got a proven record to stop that and fight that from when I served on the school board. I'm very conservative on spending. A lot of times when I was on the school board, I'd be the only no vote. I served on the county council for 4 years, and I have a record of being the most conservative on the county council. Government should be limited, and we need to stay in our lane. And that's including on spending. And we start spending over here, when we have a police officer or sheriff comes in and needs something, we need to be able to have the money to give it to them. And I've always backed the blue when I served on the county council. We was one first in the counties to give them the cameras. And police officers, they needed more officers. They come in and ask for it. I voted for that because that's what government's supposed to do, protect us. Also, the only 2 endorsements I cared about was right to life. Life begins at conception. I got that one. I got the NRA endorsement. I voted for constitutional carry. Constitutional carry is not for hunting. It's for protecting us, ourselves, and from a tyranny government that the founding fathers fought against. That's what that Second Amendment's about. And I understand that fully. And we're in a battle today because we're about to lose our country to a communist, Marxist ideologies. They're in our health. They're in our schools. They want to tear down our police department. I will fight against that. If we don't send somebody up to Indianapolis that is proven to do that, I'm your guy. I have the proof from all the boards that I served on and the school boards that I served on in the county council. I hope that we have more conservatives find their way into the political system. I'm not a politician. I'm a small businessman. I'm a farmer. I'm a grandfather and a husband. That's what I'd rather be called than a politician. To me, politician is a dirty word.
Yes, sir.
We send people up there, and I've seen them. They go up to Indianapolis, they go to D.C., they say the right things, they're conservatives. I can think of one, Todd Young. He said he was conservative. 2 years later, we know what he did. I said to his face, you promised you was going to go there and fight D.C. He come back, he didn't do it. I supported Marlon Stutzman when they ran for Congress. I went through the county knocking on doors for Marlon Stutzman because he was sent to D.C. the same year that Todd Young was. And John Boehner was who Todd Young stood for. Marlon Stutzman was one of the 26 that voted out John Boehner. We got to keep our eyes open and watch how people vote and what they do. I do. I've supported Marlon. Todd Young got Mitch McConnell's $2 million and sit out lies about Marlon Stutzman. We need a farmer like him up in Indianapolis. That's what I am. I hope I can earn your vote, and I promise you, I will not let you down if you send me to Indianapolis. One last thing, I've taken $0 from any lobbyist in Indianapolis. I come back, I had a senator turn around and ask me, you going to ask me for any money? I said, well, I've not asked for any money in the office I've ever ran. He said, well, you just got to ask if you want to get back up here. Well, he turned around and I didn't ask him. I said, well, if you want to give me some, I'll probably take. He gave me $2,500 because he knew I'm a blue-collar worker and a conservative like he was. I come back with $2,500 in my checking account for my campaign. I raised every bit I need locally. $100 here, $500 here. All my money is locally. I took no Indianapolis money. I don't want to be owed Indianapolis. I want to be owed to you and represent you. I appreciate you, and I hope I earned your support. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Our last two candidates are for Floyd County Sheriff. Both of them have decades of experience, so we decided to invite both. But unlike these other candidates, we do have 2 questions from our leadership committee for them after they give their speech. So the first of those 2 candidates is Sam Sarkison. I believe that's right.
First of all, I'd just like to thank the Southern Indiana Patriots for inviting us here. As Dr. Burns says, I'm an Indiana State Trooper. I've been with the Indiana State Police 42 and a half years. I'm a professional law enforcement officer. I've never been a politician. This is my first run in politics. I have been a lifelong resident of Floyd County. I've been married to my wife Kathy for 37 years. We have 2 grown sons, 2 adorable granddaughters, which we thoroughly enjoy. My wife and myself are Christian faith at the Southeast Christian Church, Southern Indiana campus, where we worship our Christian faith. I attended New Albany High School, Ball State University, Indiana University Southeast, and the Indiana State Police Academy. As I said before, I've been in law enforcement 42 years, all serving with the Indiana State Police. I've held several positions in the Indiana State Police, from trooper all the way to command positions. I'm currently the Area 4 Southeast Indiana Commander for the Crime Scene Investigators. We cover 15 counties, all in the southeast part of the state of Indiana. I have several law enforcement certificates, both federal and state. As your sheriff, I pledge the citizens of Indiana and Floyd County for security and uphold the Constitution of the United States. Some of my platforms involve being tough on drugs. I feel like drugs are a nexus to our crimes, all the way from shoplifting to our violent crimes. I have also other platforms involving school resources officers. I believe we need our school resource officers in our schools. Our students are our greatest treasure, along with our school institutions. I want our sheriff's department to be a service-oriented agency, transparency. I also have platforms. I want to also have a citizens academy where we can bring citizens in to show and understand how the sheriff's department works. I also want to have a kids camp for sheriffs so the kids can have some contact with law enforcement a different level and see how law enforcement works. I'm going to tell you that liberty is more important than security. And I'm going to tell you that, and I'm going to end up with that. I believe that we have to have liberty. Without liberty, we don't have our thought process, we don't have our freedoms, our movements. Security is important, because without security, we have a hard time having liberty. So my pledge to the citizens is we're going to do both, and we're going to provide the liberty and security for Floyd County. I feel like the staff I've put together with our current sheriff, who's agreed to stay on as my chief, and all the other great law enforcement officers with the Floyd County Police Department, as Danny Short said, the Floyd County Police Department is one of the best, if not the best, sheriff's department in Floyd County. The correction department also has the highest grades. I know that both the federal and the state jail inspectors, and all they do is talk about how great the Floyd County Jail is. We're going to keep those people going in the right direction. with our dispatchers and our other support system to provide the security and the safety to the people of Floyd County. I think we have some questions that I'm gonna be asked here.
We're gonna do Steve, and then we'll have you both up there.
Okay. Like I said, I believe in the U.S. Constitution. I believe in the Second Amendment. I didn't have any problem with the constitutional carry. I never saw where a criminal or violent criminal usually has a gun permit. In my 42 years of law enforcement, that's not gonna stop somebody from committing crimes. So I had no problem with that. It does add some challenges to law enforcement, but that's what we've done over the history, and we'll live up to the challenges. Besides that, if afterwards I'll be around, you can check with my website, samforsheriff.com. Also, I'm on Facebook. My kids got me on that, so we're on Facebook. It's a necessary, we gotta have that. So you can see my other accomplishments. And if you have any questions for me, you can also reach out to me by my telephone number, 812-989-9623. It's on every piece of my literature, and I have literature on the back table there. Thank you very much for inviting us, and appreciate it. Have a safe day. God bless.
Like I said, we'll bring both Sam and Steve up for 2 quick questions right at the end. Next, running for the same office, Floyd County Sheriff, is Steve Bush.
It's okay, you can clap, it's fine. I'd like to thank everybody for coming. Gosh, you know, how we started the night, Dr. Pearson, I'm not sure if I like you right now. You start off with Mr. Hall, and he's so dynamic of a speaker. And to follow that and everybody else, so everybody did a great job in speaking. But I just want to thank the Southern Indiana Patriots for inviting us and vetting, you know, taking that opportunity to do that, and that's a great opportunity. I wasn't going to say this, but I'm going to go ahead and do it. I like sometimes to make analogies that, you know, in the Bible, in the book of John, you talk about Jesus is at the well, and he's talking to the Samaritan woman. He wasn't supposed to talk to women, he wasn't supposed to talk to her, but he did. So he took a leap of faith, he took a step out, just like you guys are standing up for what you believe in and standing up for your values. And so I appreciate that, and thank you all for that. I have 4 principles that I go by: is God, family, community, and country, and I stand by those. And as sheriff, I'll be using those as my guiding light. My wife and I, we've been married for 29 years. We have 2 adult children, and we have now become grandparents. So we're very fortunate in that respect. I've often asked, you know, why do you want to be sheriff? Why do you want to run for an office? It's pretty simple. I want to serve. You know, I've been serving my whole life professionally and personally, and so we want to continue that service because of my grandbabies. So when you're committed to doing those things, you get a lot more done. Back in 2000, what's kind of ironic, coming up on Monday is Patriots Day in Boston. Every 3rd Monday in April, they run the Boston Marathon. So in 2018, I was able to qualify and run in the Boston Marathon. And why you say that's, you know, most people might not be runners, but what's important is the fact that I spent 27 weeks training for that race. You know, I qualified for it, and that's it. I spent 27 weeks training. So I was committed in doing that race, just like I would be committed as sheriff to protecting your rights, your freedoms, and your liberties that the Constitution allows us. You know, our founding fathers and what our country was founded was our belief in our faith. And I truly believe that in my 4 principles. I attended Indiana State University, obtained a bachelor's degree in criminology with a psychology minor, and I ran cross country and track there, so that's kind of been running my whole life and committed to doing that, just like I would be in my law enforcement career and as sheriff. I've been with New Albany Police Department for 30 years. I was a Floyd County Commissioner for 12 years. I was president 6 of those 12 years, serving in that role, running meetings and our agendas and stuff like that. And so in the New Albany Police Department, I was 3rd in command at one point, which is the major's position. I was over budget and payroll, actually the same time that Kevin Bayline was there. During that time, we worked together on some projects, and he talked about the YMCA being an anchor in our community and working on those things. And so one of the things that I was able to do as major, a short, brief time, was we started our first flex unit. And what that is, that's a proactive policing unit. We basically investigate career criminals. You got to have your thumb on what's going on in our community. Mental illness and addiction is crippling our community, and we got to make sure we can put programs in place to stop that, but also we got a small percentage of criminals that are committing crime, and we got to make sure we stop that. So I was able to put together our first unit that does that, and we'll do that at the Sheriff's Department as well. I've been in leadership roles throughout my career. Started, at the New Orleans Police Department, we have merit boards and a merit process. We have a corporal, sergeant, captain, so I went through all three. I'm currently a captain over patrol shift. I've been over leading the criminal investigation division, as a commander there. So I've been in leadership roles throughout my 30 years, and I've enjoyed every bit of it. As we continue on, as sheriff, just like even Sam said, we kind of have the same mantra of protecting our community. We talk about safety and security, we talk about service. Under safety, we are going to make sure we work with the community in solving the tough issues. We're going to have a 4-point plan as sheriff, and the first one is community-oriented policing, which we're going to work with the neighborhood associations, identify our problems. Problem-oriented community policing, or problem-oriented policing is what we're going to do is identify our problems in our community and work with the community to solve them. Quality of life issues is the third point. Zero tolerance of those issues. We're going to enforce ordinances and making sure we handle the issues within our community. And the last point is intelligence-led policing. We want our intelligence and gather that to be able to put our resources where those numbers show us. Under security, we're going to practice succession leadership. We're going to be able to send our young supervisors to a leadership school to become better leaders, to lead their subordinates and lead the other officers, and therefore we're going to have a better work product out to the community. And under service, we're going to make sure that as sheriff, I'm out in the community getting feedback, real-time feedback, so we know that we're serving the community properly, and to make sure that that we're getting our work product and our service out correctly. And finally, to kind of sum up everything, I believe in the Constitution wholeheartedly, and I believe in protecting that Constitution, like I said before, the liberties and freedoms of each and every one of you. And as I'm committed in my running, I'm also committed to serving, and I'm committed to being the next sheriff. And we're going to work together to solve the tough issues. I'm going to read something real quick and kind of sums it up. To keep the peace and to secure, defend, and protect the people of this jurisdiction from threats to their liberties, their livelihoods, and the peaceable enjoyment of their property. The nature of that solemn oath requires that the actions of the sheriff and the performance of his duty must conform to the Constitution of the United States and the Constitution of this state. That was a quote from Sheriff Mack out in Arizona. I've learned a lot about the Constitution, even though I've been a police officer, telling a couple of friends, I think it was Jackie, I've had a conversation with Mary, we talked about this. Being a police officer for 30 years, I've read the Constitution and I served in that realm, but I've learned a lot more by talking to these ladies and then learning about this group. Angie, I had a couple of conversations with her, and we've talked about this. She finally got me here. We've been wanting to speak for a long time. But I've learned a lot about being a constitutional sheriff, and I've learned a lot more about protecting the liberties and freedoms of everybody. And that's my solemn oath, what I just read from what he stands for, what you all stand for. As the next sheriff, it's a critical time to elect who's going to defend your liberties and freedoms. So my name is Steve Bush, running for sheriff in the Republican Party in Floyd County. I have a webpage, electstevebush.com. I have some literature, and I'll be around to answer questions. So thank you.
Steve and Sam, if you'd hang around a second. I consider this a very tough question, but we wanted to ask this for both people. I think the general idea that we had was what Jackie alluded to. Ben Franklin said, "Those who would give up essential liberty to purchase a little temporary safety deserve neither liberty nor safety." I have a lot of confidence that both of these men will do a fine job of protecting the citizens. We wanted to know, are they going to do a fine job of protecting our rights? And so I consider this a very tough question the leadership committee had. Technology is rapidly expanding the ability to surveil the citizenry. Do you agree or disagree with the following, and why? Even without a warrant, police should, or they should contract with private companies to video monitor most public areas, use AI facial recognition and people tracking software, search private ancestry or medical DNA databases, and generally take any currently legal measure possible to ensure people follow the law and are safe. So I think I'll start with Steve. Sam will follow up, and the second question we'll do the opposite order.
Yeah, that's a loaded question. No, but it's a very important question. And so really, you passed it over, and that might have been the question, and you look at it, and at the end of the day, we have to protect our freedoms and liberties. The police agencies use technology to our advantage when it comes to license plate reading stuff. If we have stolen cars and stuff like that, we have a sort of different tools to assist us in investigations and the things we do. But we also have protocol and procedures such as gathering warrants for different things. When I think on the survey, I was kind of unsure of what you meant about ancestry stuff and all that. We have DNA. Obviously, if someone commits a crime and they're a felon, they go in jail. We will be able to obtain that to be able to compare it. But to go through all that, that's a reach. That's stretching. And so we got to be careful in law enforcement on what we do. There was a question. I guess I'll probably gonna jump the gun, so I'll just wait on that. If it's one, but I'll follow up. But no, we got to be very careful. And if we do things, there are certain procedures that we get warrants, and we have certain probable cause and certain things in line before we take measures and take steps.
Okay. Sam?
That's a good question he asked. Your question, it goes over the total gambit of technology. I've said I'll use any legal means to protect the citizens of Floyd County, using due process and within the U.S. Constitution. As far as these methods that he's talking about, we have checks and balances in law enforcement. And so warrants are needed anytime we reach out if it's not in public domain. We use video cameras, public cameras, and I think the public wants us to protect them. If somebody walked over here, your car parked over here, and somebody threw a brick through your window over here, and they ran across the lot over here at the Circle K, they're going to be on film because there's video all over the Circle K. And for a gas station, they have pretty good video, I'll tell you that, because we've used it before. So we're going to use those type of measures. As far as those other measures, anytime we have to far reach, we're going to use warrants. We have to use warrants. It's not going to be held in court. The checks and balances are in the court. We have to answer for what we do. So there's no sense in taking shortcuts, because there's a saying in law enforcement. We can't burn the bridge. If we burn the bridge and we don't get across it, then we've lost it. There's no do-overs. So we're going to do things the right way. I believe that technology, it's coming with all the technology we have. But as far as the question goes, I disagree that we do not. We're not going to take any shortcuts. We're not going to do anything illegal. We're not going to take anything. We're not going to get anything from anybody without using due process and going through the courts and obtaining warrants and upholding the U.S. Constitution. So that's my answer.
And the second's a little more straightforward. What are your thoughts on the following firearms or Second Amendment related legislation? And I do want to remind everyone, there was actually a proposal this year to make sheriff an appointed rather than elected office. So sheriffs are elected, they are accountable to the people that they police. That was actually proposed this year by Republicans. So we need to be out in front of that, stopping that. Okay, which of these thoughts on the following firearms and Second Amendment related legislation, what are your thoughts? Constitutional carry, which finally passed. You do not have to pay for a permit in order to exercise your constitutional right to carry. The Second Amendment sanctuary. If the federal government were to impose new firearms restrictions, the sheriffs and the state of Indiana are under no obligation to follow that federal law. And then red flag laws. So we would like to know your thoughts on constitutional carry, Second Amendment sanctuary, and federal and red flag laws. Let's go with Sam first this time.
All right. I think I've already talked about the constitutional carry. I didn't have any problem with it. The permits, there was ways that some people, they didn't tell the truth when they got their permits. Like I said before, permits never stop criminals from carrying guns. They discourage some good people from getting guns. So I have no problem with the constitutional carry. Now, I do also caveat that with that right comes responsibility. So I do expect citizens to be responsible when they're carrying guns. And I would also encourage people to be tactful when they're carrying guns. I have my own ideas about that, and I'll be around later on, and I'll be more than glad to share them with anybody who'd like to know about that. Because I want you to stay safe, and I want you to be able to defend yourself and defend me. I carry a gun all the time, but I want you to be able to back me up if someone comes in here or something happens. So I do have some ideas about tactically carrying a gun, but I'll be more glad to discuss that later with anybody. As far as the Second Amendment sanctuaries, if I'm sheriff, we're not going to partake in any of that nonsense. A lot of people have a lot of good ideas, but I will tell you, if you listen to the Floyd County Sheriff's Department, they're busy. They're running from one end of this county to the other end of the county. We have a duty to the citizens to protect our citizens, and that's what we're going to do. That's the number one duty we have. So we're not interested in any type of participation in that, and we won't participate in that. And I will come out publicly against that. That's another thing I think I answered on my question. One thing you can do when you're an office holder is the sheriff. You're a constitutionally elected officer. You work for the people. So when you see a wrong, you need to make sure that everybody else sees it. And I'll be that guy. Because everybody who knows me knows I have a hard time keeping my mouth shut if something's wrong. I call it balls and strikes. And that's just the way I've always been. As far as the red flag laws, it is a law in Indiana. Any police department, I think Steve will back me up on this, nobody likes to mess with guns. They're a pain in the, where, messing with guns. I have seen that law, and since it's taken place, I have seen that law used one time, and it was used in a domestic situation in this very county where a man beat his wife half to death, and his family went to the judge and the prosecutor and begged them to take the guns out of his house. They went through due process, they went to a court, they got a court order, and the guns were removed. Then they were given to another family member. I don't know what the outcome of that case was. It wasn't our case. I'm just familiar with the case. So I will tell you, I'm not a big fan of the law, but it is a law. And, we just have to work with what we can work with. If anybody has any more questions, I'll be around and be more than glad to answer your questions.
All right, Steve?
I'll just go backwards. I'll just start with, and I'll have to agree with Sam. We've had a spirited campaign so far, and we're out doing what we can do and send our message out. The red flag law, I think, I've done the street for a while, and I don't think I've ever even used it, so it's there as a law. It's a tool, but at the same time, and all the three questions it boils down to, we have a constitution in place. And we are going to abide by the Constitution and protect that Constitution and uphold that law of the Constitution. And that's protecting the liberties and freedoms of everybody. So I go back to it. I was for constitutional carry, so that's fine. It makes sense. As sheriff, we're going to put on classes to be able to teach people how to safely, use a firearm, because some people don't. I would assume almost everybody in this room probably does. But we're going to put classes on to be able to safely instruct people what to do. And that goes along with how to carry the gun, how tactically to use a gun, and when to use it, when not to use it, and have it, because that's the right. And we want to protect those rights. So all three questions for me are all about the same, of protecting the Constitution and afforded to that. So.
Okay. Thank you.
Give them a big hand. We kind of threw some tough questions at them that some of these other candidates didn't have to face in front of the audience. So I appreciate that. Like I said, both had decades of experience. I think it's important for us to know our law enforcement. Of all of the people that have talked today, unfortunately, these are the people that we're most likely to actually run into. That's Okay, I did want to take a moment to mention some candidates that weren't given the opportunity to speak but are in the office. They are Republicans. Is Scott Hawkins here? Oh, he was here. So he did fill out. We do consider Scott aligned with our general philosophy. And I believe he's the only Republican in his race. He is a Indiana House rep. Is Dale Bagshaw here? Yep, Dale. Could you give us your name, what office you're running for, and who are you running against?
Actually, I'm Dale Bagshaw with you already. I currently serve as president of Floyd County Council. And I'm running for New Albany Township trustee against an incumbent, David Brewer.
Okay. All right, Dale Bagshaw. Is there anyone else running for elected office that wants to stand up and announce that? If not, we want to bring up just for 2 minutes, I believe his name is Isaiah Turner with Americans for Prosperity. He just wants to mention something about his organization and an event they're holding.
Hey everybody, Isaiah Turner. I've been here before. I think I've met a lot of you. I'm the Community Engagement Director for Americans for Prosperity, Southern Indiana. Just want to invite all of you out to an event we're having a week from tomorrow. It's a 9th Congressional District GOP primary debate, and it's going to be held at Huber's Orchard and Winery. And if you're interested in coming, talk to me after, or you can go to our Facebook page, Americans for Prosperity, Indiana. And you can click on the RSVP link on there. It's free, but we do ask you to RSVP so that we know how much food to get. So we're looking forward to it, and I hope to see you all there.
All right, a couple of other events. These are in Kentucky, but they are with aligned organizations. There is a candidate night for American Family Association of Kentucky that's on April the 18th. If you sign up very quickly at afaky.org, they do have a free chicken dinner beforehand at 5:30, but otherwise they've got a bunch of conservative candidates, much like these candidates on the Kentucky side. That's in basically South Louisville. That's the 18th of April at 6:30 is when the candidates will start speaking. Constitutional Kentucky, which is a group we are closely aligned with, they are having a Meet the Candidates forum in the East End of Louisville. That's on April 29th at 6:30. This information will be posted on the SIP website, sip.red. Check that out. I also want to point you to Indiana Liberty Caucus, which is IN Liberty Caucus, CAUCUS.com. You can find a picture of any candidate that spoke here today. If you mouse over there, you can go to their website, you can donate to their campaign, and I do want to emphasize that. This is probably getting to the last days that you could give to their campaign, and it actually helped them during the primary season. And so some of these candidates, the real election is the primary, which is May the 3rd. Whichever Republican wins in a lot of these races, that's who's going to be your representative or your sheriff or whatever else. So make sure that you get out to vote on May 3rd. INLibertyCaucus.com. You can go to their websites and give with a credit card. I don't know Indiana election law well. You could probably talk to them today and give them $50. I don't know. But talk to them. I'm sure they know it much better than me. Is there anything I missed? Oh, don't forget, if you haven't given a little bit for the church for hosting us, I believe we'll have the basket out front if you want to drop a couple dollars in there just for allowing them to host. If the News and Tribune is still here, I do want to single out, if we do get press from a somewhat fair press source, we as conservatives need to support those outlets because the left is taking over. The Courier-Journal is just, I'll save my comments on them, but I think you all have seen it. Same thing for most of the Louisville TV stations. So if we can support a local news organization that plays things, basically balls and strikes down the middle, we should support those anytime that we get. Most of these candidates will probably be hanging around a little while. We actually got out basically at 8:30, which is amazing. Thank you. Thank you for coming. Thank you for doing your civic duty and becoming educated. Thank you.